Unlatched Mind. This is Vinny. Today we'll be talking about mindfulness with Dr. Danny Penman. Dr. Penman is a meditation teacher, an award-winning journalist. He's written several books, one of which is an international bestseller, and he'll kind of give an overview of that. I think the mindfulness thing is really important. I think a lot of us don't know what it is, but we all definitely picture people sitting around incense and yoga poses, right? But that's that. Although its roots are in Buddhism, that's not at all the limit of its application. I mean, it goes way beyond that. In fact, we even talk about Dr. Penman, had quoted some studies they had done with the U.S. Special Forces and different mindfulness practices and how it notably enhanced their cognitive ability in theater, in actual combat situations, which is super interesting. And we'll talk about that as well. We did have some technical difficulties at the beginning, which I've edited out, but you'll notice that the audio quality is not quite there, at least on my end. Dr. Penman sounded fine. I wasn't able to use my normal podcasting setup because we had to make I had to run an Audible at the last minute there when we were recording, but and Dr. Penman didn't have a ton of time, so I wanted to be respectful of his time, so I just kind of made a quick adjustment, and we just started recording. But anyway, I think we had a good conversation, and I do want to get Dr. Penman back for another conversation where we can actually dig a little deeper into this stuff. So with that, I'll give you Dr. Penman.
Dr. Penman, I really appreciate you coming on. I think I found you online, and I think it was literally mindfulness can solve tinnitus. I'm simplifying
right, yes.
it, and
Yes.
I've been a tinnitus sufferer for years. Since I was 12. I'm 42 now, and so I just came across that. I wasn't even looking for you, to be honest, or any of that topic, and I said, "What the hell is this thing?" Well, I can think my way out of tinnitus. Well, I'll try it. Anyway, so that led me down a rabbit hole, and I found a lot of your content. And I said, "Oh, this guy would be great for a podcast." So, anyway, I guess if you could just give a little background of who you are, and we can start from there.
Yeah, I am the co-author of the international bestseller, Mindfulness, Finding Peace in a Frantic World. Sold 1.5 million copies so far, so it's doing,
Fantastic.
quite well.
Is that your first book, or is that your only book, or?
Sorry?
Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is that your first book, your only book, or?
I've written 4 mindfulness books.
Oh, okay.
That's the biggie, because that's been out the longest.
Yep.
The others, my second one is on pain relief, using mindfulness for pain relief. In the US, it's called You Are Not Your Pain. Mindfulness, counterintuitively, is absolutely brilliant for chronic pain. In fact, it's starting to be used across the UK's health system, because if you suffer from chronic pain and it goes on not just for months but for years, the pain networks in the brain actually become stronger and better at sensing pain. Your brain actually lays down new tracks inside, as it were. So you become better at feeling pain. So you end up having to take. I know it's just not fair, really.
Right.
So you're faced with this rather terrible situation where, do you keep on increasing the dose of painkillers, or do you try and find an alternative? And it turns out that both mindfulness and some flavors of cognitive behavioral therapy are really quite good for pain relief. And you mentioned tinnitus. Tinnitus is actually a form of chronic pain. It's actually noise in the brain circuits, actually like electrochemical noise in the brain circuits. And this is what most tinnitus is. There's different types, obviously. And what happens is the brain hears that electrical noise, thinks that's a bit worrying, and then turns up its amplifiers, as it were, finds it increasingly alarming, and so you tend to subconsciously focus more and more and more on the noise, and eventually becomes audible, and it becomes persistent and can stay with you for life. What mindfulness does is, first of all, it lowers your overall stress and anxiety levels, especially about the tinnitus, the noise. But actually, when you become more, I'm not sure what the phrase would be really, happier with the noise, or more content and not worried by it, the volume control in the brain actually gets turned down, and gradually it just begins to dissipate.
Now, is that a perceived dissipation, or is it actually biological?
Both, actually.
Really?
Because as the sound dissipates, those brain circuits are no longer used, and they just gradually get
probably atrophy, right? Yeah.
Exactly. The brain circuits you use get stronger, and the brain circuits you don't use get weaker progressively, and so eventually it will dissipate. Some people get complete relief. I would say I've got significant relief most of the time, but it does come back from time to time with my own tinnitus.
Right.
And this is starting to be used in cognitive behavioral therapy. Has been used for a number of years. That's what I actually had to cope with my tinnitus. It was never very bad, but they gave me a course of CBT, and there was various forms of relaxation, and it was really quite good. And then I started mixing it myself with mindfulness, because I'm a mindfulness teacher, and I found the two really amplify each other's effects. And a number of academics now are investigating this, and they've got very promising results. So yeah, go for it. I think you'll be surprised how effective it is.
Well, it's hard to believe, but I guess real quick, I guess we could take a quick step back. Define what, and I assume you've been in this mindful state, if you will, or just being in this world for quite a long time. Could you define what mindfulness is at this point?
Yes. The normal definition is paying full conscious attention to whatever thoughts, feelings, or emotions are flowing through your mind and body, but also paying full conscious attention to whatever is going on around you.
Right.
And when you do that, it cultivates this state of mind known as mindfulness, and it is quite a different way of approaching the world, because we all spend most of our time living on the autopilot. We do things out of habit, and those habits gain ever greater control over our lives, and eventually we turn into almost habit machines unless we're very, very careful. And what mindfulness does is it reverses that process. And the beauty of it is it's really very simple to do. It takes effort, but it's very simple. The simplest of all mindfulness exercises is a breathing meditation, where you just focus on the sensations of breathing. But you can cultivate this state of mind using pretty much anything. A great way of cultivating it is to, if you're eating or drinking, really pay attention to all the flavors and textures and aromas of the food.
Right.
And if you are in a very noisy place, often people find that stressful, but actually just really pay attention to the noise instead of pushing away the sound. Really start to pay attention to it. And paradoxically, you'll find it's a lot easier to accept. Just pay attention to the way it rises and falls, all the different notes, all the different every sound that around you. Just pay full conscious awareness to it, and it will have a profound effect on you. You may even come to like it.
So you're saying you love your tinnitus, you love the ringing now at this point. Because it sounds like it's the same principle where you, instead of just trying to ignore this ringing in your head. Like I said, I've had it, and my first instinct when I was a kid was to grab pillows and put them around my ears because I thought, my instinct was, hey, the sound's coming from outside, from externally.
Yeah.
That's how we're used to
Yeah.
hearing sounds, right?
Yeah.
And obviously it got louder when I blocked out the outside noise. So
Yeah.
obviously little panic set in, and over time you get used to it. But it sounds like the analogy you just gave, with the loud restaurant or the loud outside noise.
Yeah.
It sounds like it basically the same principles apply to that tinnitus, where just and Adam, I guess more of a question, just listening to it and focusing on it and hearing it, quote unquote, better will almost allow the tolerance to go up. Sounds like what you're saying.
Yes, and I mean the other thing with tinnitus is always have a little bit of background noise. Just leave a window open so you can hear maybe even traffic, aircraft, the noise of wind, rain.
I've slept with a fan on my head for the past 20 plus years, so I understand that degree. Yep. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, tinnitus is just one of those things that there are drugs available, but they the side effects aren't really worth it, and it turns out CBT is brilliant, and mindfulness would appear to be better at this stage.
Yeah, and so that was actually a question I had. What did I have here written down? The mindfulness-based attention training. Attention training versus the cognitive behavioral therapy. What's the distinction there? If you could define, what's the CBT, for example? What is that?
Well, CBT mostly it changes your kind of thought processes directly. So it challenges your thoughts about tinnitus, and it's actually quite powerful because people often find that when they understand what tinnitus actually is, or what even chronic pain actually is, the mere understanding of it diminishes its intensity quite dramatically, because it's actually the fear that makes it worse. So once you understand it, that diminishes it, and then when you have an extra layer of relaxation built in, because you're no longer anxious and stressed about it, that further lowers it. And then there's behavioral changes itself, such as making sure there is always background noise. Again, that lowers its relative intensity. And so CBT is extremely powerful for those reasons. And what mindfulness does is, by not pushing away these sounds, not being frightened of them, it has an extremely powerful extra effect. So it's the attention is paying attention is where the is the secret.
Sure,
of it.
and you're
relaxing into it, I suppose, is if you actually relax into that sound and no longer fear it.
Right.
Those brain circuits just are used with less intensity, and they're literally just atrophy.
Well, it's interesting. Obviously, the body adapts to everything, right? Physically, like physiologically, will adapt, and it sounds like you're defining that exact, adaptation. The brain is detecting something. It's like, hey, I got to get better at detecting this, so let me amplify. Let me put more cells there, develop more neurons. And in reality, we want it to do the opposite in case of pain and others. But it's just how the body works, so that makes total sense. Now, we're using tinnitus obviously as a micro example of this, but stepping back. Obviously, mindfulness can apply. And one of the things I was hoping for the listeners to get out of this is that, when you see mindfulness, you read that word, and you just picture a Buddhist monk, sitting, just in this yoga position with incense burning. And I feel like it's just a horrible misnomer and just a bad image. Where I feel like whether you're in traffic, whether you're in a physical argument, I'm sorry, it might be physical too, but or you're in an argument with somebody, or you're feeling anxiety about X, Y, and Z. It applies at all of those stages. You could apply this once you get good at it. I'd imagine you can apply it at any point.
Oh yes, absolutely. The mindfulness itself, if you practice it for 10-20 minutes a day, it will lower your overall stress levels, your overall anxiety levels, and that has huge benefits right through life. It's, life is a lot better if you're less stressed and worried. It's as simple as
Yeah,
that.
amen. Yep.
Yeah, and so it's very, very good for that. In fact, numerous clinical trials have now proven that certain treatments, such as mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, are at least as good as drugs or counseling for depression, especially the worst forms of depression. It's brilliant for anxiety and stress too. Um,
Oh, I believe it.
the
Absolutely.
yeah, and there's been a number of recent trials in the UK using our book, actually, Mindfulness: Finding Peace in a Frantic World. And these were the program in the book was tested on students at Cambridge University, and again, it was found to be highly effective relieving depression. You
Hmm.
know, it's up there with drugs and counselling. So that's how powerful it is, because the meditations in our book are between 10 to 20 minutes per day.
Hmm. Now, are these are these things you practice? I kind of, and you gave a bunch of examples in a few of your blogs, and I think I had emailed you a few of
Yeah.
them. But you actually use special forces examples where
Yes.
and I thought for me that just resonated because again it breaks the I
Yeah.
think the
Yeah.
bad image of the yoga folks sitting around on yoga mats and all that. So I really like that.
Yeah.
Could you
Yeah.
quickly just give an overview of that study? That was pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. There's a couple of pilot programs running in the U.S. military, especially with the U.S. Marines and one of the special forces units. I can't remember which one, but actually it was never disclosed.
Yeah, I didn't see it in
Anyway,
the write-up. Yeah.
yeah. And they use it mostly for stress relief, and because obviously combat's quite stressful.
Mm.
Um, and they also found it has direct cognitive benefits, such as enhancing working memory. Now, if you're a soldier in a highly stressful situation, your attention tends to narrow. And actually, that's the worst thing, because you need to be paying attention to absolutely everything
Right.
around you. You don't know where that sniper is. You don't know where that IED is.
Right.
So you got to be paying attention, and you don't want tunnel vision. But that's what happens when you become highly stressed. And what mindfulness training does is it broadens your awareness. Um, and that means you're less likely to be killed, and you will are far less likely to be in stress, suffer acute stress such as PTSD.
Right.
But also, you're going to make fewer mistakes, which means hopefully fewer, innocent people are caught up, get killed,
Sure.
because it's a highly stressful situation. Mistakes happen,
Now,
and
yeah. So
yeah,
one question that keeps rolling on my mind, and I think I know the answer, but I want to it's more question for you. So
yeah,
the meditation aspect of this thing versus the kind of the in situ application of it, and I always in my head I kind of draw two distinct, I guess
yeah,
categories. If I'm a person that wants to take up some mindfulness
yeah,
practices and I want to
yeah,
meditate in the morning 10 minutes or whatever,
yeah,
I imagine that alone probably has a lot of benefits, but when I'm in the middle of a situation, and I always use, I feel like I've always sort of kind of practiced some of these tenets just in my own kind of coping mechanisms. I'm in
yeah,
an argument with somebody, or someone says something, whether it's a superior at work or
mm,
a friend or someone I love or respect, whatever it might be, and they say something that hurts, and you immediately get that feeling, and your adrenaline pumps, and it's a
yeah,
terrible
yeah,
feeling. And in my head,
yeah,
I picture sound waves entered my ears, they went through my
mm,
brain, they hit some filter, they did, they were that those sound waves were triaged some way, and then
yes,
they told my brain to elicit some feeling, and then
yeah,
and when it's bad, it's terrible, and you get
yeah,
whatever the chemicals are, and so in my head I'm like, okay, obviously those sounds came in, the triaging that happened in my brain, I could control that. I could
yes,
control how I receive that and how I let my body respond. So
yeah,
I'm imagining, and kind of what I'm getting at is, is it that these things come in pairs where if you start practicing mindfulness, whether it's formal meditation or whether it's just getting in a certain state of mind while you're driving to work,
yeah,
on one end, and then also trying to apply, actively try to apply these practices while in these in the most extreme situations, these special forces folks that you mentioned. Is there these two sides of it, with like the offline and the in situation type application?
Well, yes. The thing is, what's really important is you do these practices before you're actually put in a stressful situation, because if you are under pressure or you're in an explosive argument,
right,
it's almost too late. What you need to do is to not get in that situation in the first place, and that's what mindfulness helps you to do. It helps dampen down your reactivity, so you learn to respond rather than react.
Right.
And so that's where the major benefits come from, so that you don't get into these situations to start off with. If you do find yourself in that situation, you are less anxious and stressed to start off with, which means the bar's being raised.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. Yep.
Yeah.
You're not coming in hot.
Yeah, exactly. Then there are obviously techniques that, if you find yourself in this terrible situation and you're about to explode, just focusing on your breathing can diffuse the situation. And that's what these courses do, really, is it gives you a number of different tools. But the most powerful ones are the ones you use beforehand. That's why it's important to, meditate 4, 5, 6 times a week if you can, because then you're just a lot calmer. A good way of looking at it is, imagine you're stuck in traffic, you're late for a meeting, and you're going to get into that meeting and there's going to be lots of very angry people. Yes.
Sounds like
my
week.
Yeah. So compare that state of mind before anything has actually happened, that hyped up state of mind, to a state of mind where maybe it's Sunday afternoon, you've had a lovely weekend, you've had a really good lie-in in the morning, some great food. You're a lot more relaxed. So if you are then confronted with the same set of circumstances, you're not going to react as explosively on a Sunday afternoon as you will on Monday, stuck in traffic.
Right.
And that's what mindfulness does. It means you're more likely to be in that relaxed state of mind. And when you're in that relaxed state of mind, you can think more clearly, you're more creative. Your working memory is enhanced, your rationality is enhanced. You just perform a lot better.
Oh, absolutely. It's so obvious to me when when you're under duress, when you're under stress, just mental stress. Your body doesn't work as well. Like I used to joke about when I was in college or something. If someone looking over my shoulder when I was typing on a keyboard, I couldn't really type because I was watching them judge my typing skills or something. But as soon as they walked away, I was fine. So it's just it's that added little stress has immediate physical limitations. It's crazy. Now, are we naturally mindless? I feel like this is an active process that folks like you and others obviously become. I'm sure you're probably on autopilot in the mind in a good way, meaning you just practice it as your day-to-day routine. I feel like the rest of us it doesn't happen naturally, and I might be wrong there, but I feel like you have to actively engage this process for it to really help and be.
Well, yes. However, young children are naturally mindful, and they really do live and experience the real world as it's happening. And then as we get older, we get more and more trapped by our habits. But even the most habit-bound person, the person who's just constantly trapped in their circular thoughts, they have moments of mindfulness, moments of lucidity. And what mindfulness does, it gradually expands those moments of lucidity. I think the average person is fully conscious and aware for around 2 hours a day, which is
not very reassuring.
It's not very reassuring, but
Well, it's interesting you said that, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but there was an article I read a while ago about the average workday being 8 to 10 hours a day, and I think it was something more or less in line with what you just said, where you're really only getting, I don't know what the exact timeline was, but you're only getting a couple, give or take, hours of actual productive time out of any human being in a day. So, and I don't know if they were calling for a 2-hour workday or whatever it was. I don't know if it was a political statement or not, but it was just interesting. It sounds like it's something related to what you just mentioned.
Yeah, well, there are a number of companies running experiments at the moment where they actually cut the working week to 20 hours. And the preliminary results are great because apparently people are producing exactly the same end result, but they're only working for effectively 2.5 days a week.
I'm going to go on a limb and say these companies are not in the United States.
I don't think they are actually. There's a couple in Britain. There's some in Scandinavia. There's a couple in Australia.
Okay. All that's making sense so far. Yep. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And but the thing is, if it works,
right.
There's going to be a lot of pressure from the rest of the workforce in these companies to also do a 20-hour week. Yeah, and I know that the German car industry, auto industry, they're moving towards a 30-hour week. France has a maximum working week of 35 hours. And productivity does not go down. In fact, it goes up. People end up. What seems to happen is if you cut the working week by 20% and ask people to produce the same amount,
right,
they end up producing the same amount.
Right. Yeah, there's plenty of waste involved in a 40 or 50-hour week for sure. I mean, it's human nature. It's nothing against anyone or any country. It's just human nature. Yeah.
Yeah, well, exactly. And what's if you say, look, if you get your work done by 3:00 in the afternoon, you can go home. Everybody's going to get their work done.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, it's amazing when you have a deadline. When things tend to always get done just by the deadline, and if that deadline was fake, and you make up a deadline, and you want to give yourself 5 extra days of buffer, you just make up a deadline that's five days prior, and it seems like everything gets done that day.
Yeah,
so it's well, I'm not going to admit that I've done that to my guys, but at times we've played that trick. Yeah, it's amazing. Now this whole, and I think I mentioned to you in what I had sent you, but this all sounds great, and I truly believe that it's a real thing. I mean, I just do. I've done it. I know when I get in a certain mindset, things are better or worse depending on my mindset. So that alone for me is proof that this whole world works. This whole concept works. Now, what will the skeptics say? Because you Google around and it's the internet, so you get you're in that whole world of just garbage. But a lot of garbage anyway, a lot of good, but a lot of garbage as well. I mean, what would the skeptics say to this whole thing? And what would their perspective be?
But you know what? The really weird thing is there aren't many skeptics out there. I as soon as I started this 10 years ago, thereabouts, my first thought was there's going to be this massive reaction, and actually it hasn't happened. There's been a few people who've done a few experiments that show people who go to these mammoth retreats in the Rocky Mountains, a month or 3 months, and they're complete novices. They've got mental health problems, and they go to a retreat that's very isolated. They don't talk to anybody. They're eating food that they've never eaten before in their life, and a very small proportion of them have had a bad reaction. Well, is anybody surprised? If you've spent your life eating McDonald's beef burgers, living a highly stressed life, and it's pushed you to the edge of your sanity, and then you go to a retreat in the Rocky Mountains and only eat vegan food, you're not allowed to talk to anybody, and you're alone with your demons, you're going to have a bad reaction. So those are the people who've had bad reactions. And what if you do just like a normal mindfulness course, it just doesn't happen. Mindfulness is not an extreme sport, and if you find it a bit unsettling for whatever reason, you just stop doing it.
Right, exactly right. Now you gave a specific example of, and I think her name was Fiona. I'm looking through my notes here. It was, and Fiona was this the U.S. Marine example? I don't remember. Fiona suffered. Oh, she suffered from lupus,
Oh
and
yes.
you just basically had mentioned, and this really stood out to me because I always think, well, what I think tends to happen in almost anything. Everything we're talking about, I think anyone can use for the betterment of their life. Period. I think that statement stands on its own. It's absolute truth. You really can't be debunked. I don't think anyway. Maybe there's some angle I'm missing, but what tends to happen is maybe perhaps, and maybe this is more of a question for you, have folks really try to capitalize monetarily on this idea and try to, all right, I get this new course, or I have this new whatever product, and you're gonna pay me this amount of money and your problems will go away. And I feel like with any solid theory, those folks are going to run with it. Some folks anyway are going to run with it, try to capitalize on it monetarily, and then oversell, of course, the benefits. And then you start getting the lashback saying, well, this whole thing doesn't work. Throw the baby out with the bathwater, which is terrible. Which, wait a minute, the concept was sound. Folks just went crazy with it. So let's not debunk the entire thing. So I don't know. First of all, the question would be, have you seen that in any way in this field?
No, I mean, I think because this has come really from the grassroots, as in it's ordinary people learning meditation, finding it very useful, and then teaching it to others. First of all, they ain't making a huge amount of money from it, and secondly, they realize that it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. It's just very effective, so they don't overpromise. I mean, there are certain apps out there that promise the earth, but you kind of always get that. I'm heartened, I really am, because there doesn't seem to have been this massive overhyping of the whole thing.
Well, that's good. That gives me a little bit of faith in humanity here. That's
I mean, one of
that's excellent.
The only reaction I've noticed, and it's due to a misunderstanding, is from certain churches, and they're kind of more extreme end, and they see this as basically Buddhism by the back door. They see it as a religious practice, and it's not a religious practice at all. It's just something that religions through the ages have used to kind of calm and settle their minds.
Right. I mean, it's got its origins in Buddhism, though, correct?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right.
But equally, it's a vein that runs through all religions. Mindfulness was actually quite common in Europe until the late Middle Ages, and then for some reason it just kind of died out once the big monasteries were broken up, mostly in the UK, but across Europe. That knowledge died, and it was only really rediscovered on any scale, I would say, a few decades ago.
Right.
But it's common in Islam as well, Judaism. It's there everywhere. And what's really great is the Church of England, for example, embraces it. My local church has Christian mindfulness classes.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's although it's being rediscovered by Christianity, it's not religious per se. It's just a great way of calming the mind, ready to do what follows next, which prayer or whatever.
Yeah, I see it completely separate from religion, but I really do. But I guess it gets to you get the brain, you get the mind. If it was just a brain thing, okay, I think no one would overlap the two. But you get the mind, it starts to connect to this spiritual thing, and I can see it overlapping. But
yes.
Anyway, real quick, going back to that, I forgot how we started down this path, but the woman, I think her name was Fiona, suffering from lupus. You had referenced brain scans done that showed her pain areas of her of her brain, brain receptors that were lighting up. I think, like you said, like a Christmas tree. And then and then post this mindfulness therapy, it was it was a noticeable improvement.
Yes.
I think that's profound. I mean, I think that's medical actual proof almost. That this is not a placebo thing. This is this is some real stuff.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, there's been a number of studies now that have involved brain scans, and people who've suffered sometimes for decades with chronic pain. Not only do they subjectively report a big drop in chronic pain levels, as said, you can see their brains calming down. They become less reactive. Especially in the pain centers. And there's some wonderful studies done in one of the big American medical schools, and the one at Chapel Hill. I will remember the name in a minute. And they found about a 50% reduction in pain, and with
Wow.
and for experienced meditators, it was 90%. So this is a big effect, and you can see it in the brain as well.
Wow, I don't know why anyone wouldn't be interested in this topic.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it was more things you can do to eliminate prescription drugs and those things you put in your body. I mean, even if it helped 3%, 5%, why not, right? But the numbers you're referencing even more so.
Yeah, that study was actually done at the Wake Forest Baptist Medical School, which is one of the big medical universities.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's not a bunch of hippies sitting around in a circle.
Right.
This is proper science,
Yeah, no, and I think that's if the takeaway of this conversation is anything, it's that we should debunk that impression that it's just for those folks that are, again, the Buddhist monks that want to go sit in a circle. This is applicable to everyday life, including U.S. Special Forces throughout. If they can do it, I think the rest of us can, Now, would you recommend?
And to give full credit to Buddhists, they did keep these techniques alive for thousands of years.
Oh, I 100% agree. I don't know what I read a while ago, but I remember thinking the same thing. This might have been a decade or so ago, but I remember reading. I was brought up Christian, and but I have my own kind of branching out to see what's out there. And the Buddhist principles just seemed. They just blew my. They blew me away. It was just. It didn't seem very. It seemed like. It almost didn't seem religious. It seemed just like the best way to possibly live as a human being on Earth. If I could just, generically make
it's a philosophy.
Yeah.
These things, the concept of religion is relatively modern. There used to be a seamless transition between religion and philosophy. It's the kind of ancient Greek idea. Just pre-Christian. Greeks and Romans, they had philosophies for living rather than, hard and fast religions.
Right. Yep. Right. Now, so in terms of how someone would get into this world, are there apps you recommend? Obviously, your book you'd probably certainly recommend. Obviously, it's crushing. So this is something you did right in that book. So congratulations there. What's the name of it again? Sorry.
The big one is Mindfulness, Finding Peace in a Frantic World, and my latest one is The Art of Breathing.
Okay, excellent.
And the Art of Breathing is, I hope, the simplest of all mindfulness books. You will read it very quickly, and it gives you the kernel of everything you need to know, really.
So someone could read that, but if someone wanted give me a book to read that I can start applying this in whatever week, whenever I finish reading it, is that the one you'd recommend?
Yeah, I would. It's only been published 6 months ago, but I think it's a distillation of everything that I've learned about mindfulness, and it's really simple and it's a fast read.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Apps? Any apps out there that you?
I'd love to recommend one, but I don't really. I think that the ideal is something that is on your phone. I can see why people go for it, but it almost kickstarts the brain in the wrong direction, I think. But having said that, we actually have an app out ourselves.
You do?
Yeah, it's only available. It will hopefully be available soon in the US, and it is it's just got the core meditations. So rather than being any fancy graphics or anything like that, it is literally a container for all of the meditations, and you just press on a big reassuring button, and the meditations play and lead you.
What is the name of the app?
It's the same as our book,
Okay.
Mindfulness: Finding Peace in a Frantic World.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
And it will hopefully be available in the US soon. That's the plan. It's been out in the UK for a while, across Europe for a while.
Okay. Android and Apple, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's always a challenge keeping both up to date, of course.
Sure. Yep. And it's just a side project, which is you probably have many.
Yes.
Well, excellent. Well, I would say I know you had a, I want to respect your time here, and is there anything else you want to leave the listeners with? I mean, we didn't touch on.
Yeah. What I can't stress enough how effective it is for relieving anxiety, stress, and depression. It's great for enhancing creativity and clarity of thought. And this is not just me saying this. This is a huge number of scientists now, scientific studies. It's beyond doubt. Its benefits are beyond doubt.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, folks at least try some. And it's funny, you look at something I've looked into, as you kind of get more and more responsibility growing up, right? In your 20s, you have no idea what you don't know. And then, I'm in my 40s now, and work is crazy, life is crazy, two young kids, crazy, big house, crazy. This, everything's crazy. But it's really how you look at it, how you internalize it, and the more successful folks are that I research and read how they cope with X, Y, and Z, I feel like there is a common thread between all of them, and they all seem to meditate. They literally call it out explicitly. It's not like, I like to just relax. It's no, I meditate. So for me, that started my interest in this world long time ago. I was like, hey, there's something there. These very, very busy people with the weight of the world on their shoulders every day are getting through it and being successful somehow, and it all seems to be saying the same thing. So if nothing else.
Well, it's just one of those great human technologies in a way that's coming back from the past.
It's
died
funny.
out for a few centuries.
I think it was Sam Harris that said it's like the ultimate human superpower. And he said that at one point. I don't know what podcast I was to. It might have been his, but I just never forgot that term because it's so. It just makes so much sense. If you have the ability to, and I call it the triaging system, right? If you experience something, you're feeling something, if you can triage that in your brain, in your mind better and improve on that whole system, you'll just be a better person. You'll be able to, relax more. You'll be able to engage in more stressful situations, which to get through, do a lot of good. Sometimes you have to go through a lot of, complex and issues and pain. And I think instead of shying away from that, you might be more engaged to walk through, knowing you can handle it. So.
Well, I mean, sometimes it seems as if the whole world has been designed from the ground up to drive us nuts. And mindfulness is the antidote to that.
Amen. I think that's a great way to finish up here. So, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
No problem. I'm happy to be back on your program at some point in the future.
Absolutely. No, I think I'm going to hold you to that. So. Okay. Well, Dr. Penman, thank you for your time. Let's do this again.
No, I'm always happy to talk.
And that's pretty much it. I hope you got something out of that. Like I kind of alluded to at the intro, I think we barely scratched the surface of this topic. So we'll definitely have another show coming up soon on mindfulness. And we'll definitely have Dr. Penman on as well again when we both have a little bit more time. So anyway, thank you for listening. See you next time.